Hello students, welcome to the Prelims Heist. Welcome to the 23rd session. I hope you have been following this initiative regularly. In this, we'll be giving you 10 questions per session that have high probability of appearing in the Prelims 2021. So without any further delay, let's get into today's questions. Question number one, this is from Polity. Which of the following aspects of rule of law are applicable to the Indian political system? We know there are two concepts, which is rule of law and then there is due process of law. The inspiration from rule of law came from the British Constitution. So, which of the following aspect is applicable to Indian political system? Absence of arbitrary powers, equality before law, primacy of the rights of the individual. Select the correct answer using the code below. I'll give you a few seconds to answer this question. I hope you have guessed the correct answer by now. The correct answer is 1 and 2 only. In Indian context, we do not give the primacy of rights to the individual. That is not given much importance. For detailed explanation, let's move on. This equality before law is actually a concept of rule of law. This is pronounced by, the concept is given by a British jurist who is called as Dicey. There are three elements or aspect. First one is absence of arbitrary power. That is, no man can be punished except for the breach of law. If he has done without having done anything wrong, he cannot be punished for it. Equality before law. That is, all citizens are equal, irrespective of he being rich, poor, who enjoys a high social status, low social status, official, who is not an official, etc. That is, anybody who is living in a country has equal rights. He is same in the eyes of law. Primacy of the rights to the individual, that is, constitution is the result of the rights of the individuals as uh, as defined and enforced by the courts of law rather than the constitution being the source of individual rights. This is where Indian system is deflected. That is, in Indian system, constitution is the source of individual rights, not the courts of law. Since in Britain we do not have a written constitution, the courts have more primacy rather than the constitution. That is the difference. If you had known that simple fact, you would have been able to answer that question. Okay, let's move on. Question number two. This question is from economy chapter. Consider the following statements regarding output gap. We have been seeing this word, this technical term in the newspaper quite frequently. It refers to the difference between the actual output of the economy and the maximum potential of the economy. It is used by policymakers to gauge inflation. So kindly answer this question. Which of the answer would be the correct answer? Let's look at the answer. Both the statements are correct. As you can guess, the first statement is actually correct. It is how much an economy can do and how much the economy is doing. That is the gap between the output, how much output it could arrive and how much output it is arriving. That is the difference. That is called as output gap. It is used by policymakers to gauge inflation because inflation could be one of the major hindrances an economy is facing, because of which there could be change in outputs. It is actually an economic measure of the difference between actual output in an economy and the potential output. That is how much it could do. It is the maximum amount of goods and services can turn out when it is most efficient. That is full capacity. This full capacity is referred as production capacity of the economy. As the GDP rise or fall, it will have surely an effect in output gap. It can either go positive or negative. Neither is ideal. It cannot be, if there is more output, it means that the economy is going to go and crash at some point. So if a vehicle is going on in a high speed, it means it is going to crash somewhere. Similarly, if the output gap is very much positive, it means there is very so much gap that the economy, it is not ideal. Less output gap means that this output gap, if it is positive, it occurs only when the actual output is more than the full capacity output. That is, the economy is pushing itself to produce this. Here it means that the demand is very high, and to meet the demand, factories and workers are operating above their efficient capacity. If the negative output gap, it means that the spare capacity or slack in economy due to weak demand. Here demand is very less. When will the demand be very less? When people do not have more disposable income. That is, then what will happen? The prices of the uh, of products will fall. that means the inflation will go in a negative pace. That is how, with this output gap, we can measure inflation. It suggests that an economy is running at an inefficient rate, that is either overworking or underworking its resources. If it is overworking, we'll have positive. If it is underworking, that is not properly utilizing its resources, it will go in a negative pace. All else equal, if the output gap is positive over time, so that the actual output, the prices will begin to rise. That is, there is more demand, people are working more, the factories are working more to raise this demand. If there is more demand, then obviously the price will increase. That is how inflation will increase. If actual output falls below, prices will begin to fall. That is, deflation, or in fact disinflation can happen. This line, as you can see, this is the trend of real GDP. If there is positive growth, that is, it is above the curve, and this is negative output growth. Negative output growth in fact is deflation or disinflation. Positive output growth will result in positive inflation. Okay. Now, moving on to question number 3. This question is from international relation. Consider the following statements about OPEC and OPEC plus, that is Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC is a permanent intergovernmental organization of oil exporting nations. Is it intergovernmental? Is it permanent? These are the two words where you have to think of. It refers to the major consumers of OPEC exports. That is OPEC plus. Does it refer to major consumers of OPEC? India is not a member of OPEC, but it is member of OPEC plus. Here, if you could use a little logic, what is the full form of OPEC? Oil Organization on Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC plus should also be a little relevant to it only. So India, can it be a member of OPEC plus? Is India an exporting country? This E in OPEC, it is exporting country. E means, does India belong to this exporting? If you could eliminate that, then you will be left out with two options. One only, one and two only. Now, give me an answer. So the correct answer is one only. Let's look at the options. It is a permanent intergovernmental organization, OPEC, of 13 oil exporting and developing nations that coordinates to unify the petroleum policies of its member countries. That is, after Ecuador left OPEC, now there are only 13 countries. It aims to manage the supply of oil in an effort to set the price of oil in the world. So these 13 countries decide how much petrol should be the price all over the world to avoid fluctuations, because oil price fluctuation affects the whole economy itself around the world. It's headquartered in Vienna, Austria. OPEC is open to any country that is exporter of oil. Since India is not an exporter of oil, India is not part of this organization. Here is the, just pause the video and have a look at the membership. These are the 13 countries: Algeria, Angola, Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Congo, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Venezuela. Venezuela, the only country present in South America that is part of OPEC. And many countries in Africa and Middle East. Okay. OPEC plus. What is this OPEC plus? How is it different from OPEC? Non-OPEC countries which export crude oil along with the 13 OPEC members are termed as OPEC plus countries. That is, they also have to export, but unfortunately they are not part of OPEC. It includes Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Brunei, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Mexico, the one country in North America, Oman, Russia, South Sudan, and Sudan. OPEC plus is more influential than OPEC. Why is the reason? It controls almost 35% of global supplies and 82% of proven reserves. In addition, the 10 non-OPEC nations, among them Russia, Mexico, Kazakhstan, shares increased to 55%. Because of this OPEC plus, the shares increased to 55% and 90% respectively. This affords OPEC plus a level of influence over the world economy, because it has become the new source where it could influence the other countries. Let's move on to question number 4. For a change, I've included a modern India question. Consider the following pairs: Widow Remarriage Association, who is the founder of it? Social Service League and Seva Sadan. Just try to recollect what you have read from Rajiv Ahir's Modern Indian History Spectrum book. And if you have read India's Struggle for Independence, then you'll be able to recall this. So the correct answer is 1 and 3 only. Social Service League, it is not started by Bal Shastri Jampekar. Instead, it was started by Narayan Malhar Joshi. First one, Vishnu Sastri Pandit, he actually found an association. He is a social reformer. He founded the association called as Punar Vivah Tojak Mandal in the 1950s. This aim of this organization mainly is for widow remarriage. The association is Punar Vivah Tojak Mandal. Vivah means marriage. Social Service League, it was actually founded by Nara N.M. Joshi, who is a follower of Gokhale. It actually provides training to the volunteers for fighting against famines, epidemics, floods, and other disasters. While reading about this association, three things you have to remember. First one, when was it formed? Who is the founder? What is the main aim of the organization? Sometimes the main aim would be to liberate the press. The next one is for women. The next one is for poor people. Next one is for Dalit, etc. So these are the three things you have to remember when you read about an organization from modern India. Seva Sadan, it is founded by a Parsi social reformer who is Behramji M. Malbari, 1985. The main aim of this is to take care of the women who were exploited and discarded by the society. It catered to all caste groups. He played a reforming role in the passing of the Age of Consent Act, that is, which increased the marrying age of women. This since this was in 1891, actually this act was passed during during the viceroyship of Lord Lansdowne. By this act, actually, the age limit of girls was raised from bare minimum of 10 to 12 only. In this act, made the 12 should be the age of girls to marry them and have sexual intercourse, etc. So moving on, question number 5. This question is from environment. Which of the following were established under Wildlife Protection Act of 1972? National Board for Wildlife, Central Zoo Authority, Animal Welfare Board of India, Tiger Conservation Authority. Which of the following statements are correct? If you could just pick one odd man out, you will be able to answer this question. That's the clue there. So let's look at the correct answer. 1, 2, and 4 only, because we know this is the odd man out, because it is not under Wildlife Protection Act, but rather Prevention of Cruelty to Animals of 1960. This act. Animal Welfare Board was established under this act. Wildlife Protection Act, the act, as the name suggests, it is for protection of wild animals, birds, plants, etc., to ensure ecological and environmental security. Hunting rights of the scheduled tribe, it is protected under this in Andaman and Nicobar, and then it has provisions that caters to the CITES. CITES is International Trade in Endangered Species. So this is our national level legislation to accord to that international level agreement. It prohibits use of animal traps in certain circumstances. Establishment of wildlife sanctuary, national parks, conservation reserve, community reserve, tiger reserve. It is all done under this act only. This paved way for the Central Zoo Authority, which usually oversees all the zoos in the country. It was established in 1992. Central Zoo Authority was established in 1992. Other salient features was National Board for Wildlife was also created by this, and National Tiger Conservation also was created under this. National Board for Wildlife for framing policies and advising central and state government, both to control poaching, illegal trade of wildlife and products, wildlife conservation, etc. It also recommends for setting and managing national parks, sanctuaries, protected areas, etc., and other measures for wildlife conservation in general. Tiger Conservation Authority, it relates to trade and penalties for hunting tigers, especially in the world. And then Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, this was created in 2007 under this act only for sites related enforcement. It is a multidisciplinary statutory body under MOEFCC. So statutory because it was established under this Wildlife Protection Act. This act has six schedules giving various degrees of protection. Species in Schedule 1 and 2 get absolute protection. That is, if you do anything that would harm these species, you will be surely arrested and there will be high penalties for it. In Schedule 3 and 4 are also protected, but the penalties are little lower. Schedule 5, these are the animals that can be hunted. For example, crow and all, crow, rat, all the animals, it comes under this. In Schedule 6, this was, I believe, in last year prelims question, the plants in Schedule 6 are prohibited from cultivation and planting. For example, marijuana, that is still prohibited in India. So these come under Schedule 6. The odd one out in the option, that is Animal Welfare Board of India, it is actually established under Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 1960. It is a statutory yet advisory body only on animal welfare laws, promotes animal welfare in the country, etc. They do not have power to take any punitive action against people who are not following this or who are violating this act. It provides grants to animal welfare organization. This is just an advisory body. Remember, before the headquarters of this body was in Chennai only. Later, due to this Jallikattu controversy, it was shifted to Haryana. Now the headquarters is in Haryana. Moving on to question number 6. Which of the following is about space hurricanes is not true? Result of interaction between solar wind and Earth's magnetic field. Above the polar ionosphere, it occurs under extremely silent conditions. It is a standalone phenomenon unrelated to aurora borealis. Aurora borealis is nothing but lights that are prevalent in the North Pole. That happens because when solar wind and Earth's magnetic field comes into contraction, aurora borealis happens. So this statement says it has no relation. The space hurricanes phenomenon is no relation with aurora borealis. It is made up of plasmas, that is extremely hot ionized gases that rotate at extremely high speeds. So which of the following is not correct about space hurricanes? The correct answer is option C. It is not correct because it is related to aurora borealis. Let's look at this. Recently, why wasn't this news? Because scientists from China discovered a space hurricane for the first time ever above North Pole. As you can see in this image, as a hurricane, this also spirals. It was believed space hurricanes were a theoretical phenomenon, but recently only they saw this and it got proved. Hurricane was reported in space directly above North Pole of Earth. This could learn more about how sun affects Earth's atmosphere, gathering more details on how space weather might harm satellites, etc. This will surely help in the better understanding for us. These space hurricanes are thought to be a result of solar wind and Earth's magnetic field. This is the same phenomenon that is the result for cause of aurora borealis. As you can see, this green color light, if it happens in North Pole, it is called as aurora borealis. If it happens in South Pole, it is called as aurora australis. It is a huge funnel-like spiral geomagnetic storm that occurs above the polar ionosphere of Earth during extremely quiet conditions. It is related, yes, it is related to aurora borealis because both of this occurs due to the same phenomenon. Why this occurs? Because of electron precipitation from the storm's funnel. It actually produces a cyclone-shaped auroras. Here, the auroras, they look in a funnel shape. They are made up of plasmas. What is plasma? That is hot ionized gas that rotate at extremely high speed. What is the source of this? Sun. Since the aim of this video is to point out the areas where you could get prelims question, I'm not going in in-depth analysis of it. So if you're not understanding or if you need more understanding, kindly look into the subject and get a hold of it, because these are the potential areas where UPSC could frame prelims questions. Okay. So Question number 7. Preliminary data released by the government show that India's trade deficit in goods widened in March 2021 due to increased imports. As we know, since there was corona lockdown, etc. What could be the reason for the recent increase in imports? Relaxation in lockdown policy and start of economic activities, increase in oil import due to opening up of transportation sector, increase in public demand for goods and services. All of the above. This question is from global trade area. Kindly try and guess the answer. So the correct answer is all of the above is actually the reason. Preliminary data shows that India's trade deficit to 14.11 US dollars compared to 9.98. That is from 10 to 11, 14. It has increased. About $3 billion has increased in March 2020. This is mainly the merchandise exports were 34 billion usually, as compared to the 21 billion, an increase of 58% exports we could saw. For the first ever time in a month, the Indian exports cost 34 billion in March 2021. Since we are revamping and we are coming back with a bang, the exports have increased. India's merchandise imports compared actually increased. So both exports also increased and imports also increased. This is a very peculiar scenario. India is thus a net importer in March 2021 with a trade deficit of 14.11 billion. What is a trade deficit? It's actually an amount by which the cost of a country's import in trade deficit, import exceeds exports. Okay. Trade deficit in goods show a rise in demand in the economy, a part of the current account deficit. What are the reasons for increased imports? Relaxation in lockdown policy and the start of economic activities are the main reasons. And there is also an increase in the demand for goods. And there is also a rise in global trade. Oil import has also increased because of opening up of the transportation sector. Let's move on to the next question. So this question, he was the first Muslim scholar to study in India. He is considered as the father of Indology, which studies about India and India's culture, etc. He accompanied Muhammad of Ghazni during his Indian invasions. He wrote a book titled Taqi-i-Hind. He was, who is, these statements refer to who? Ibn Battuta, Abdul Razak, Al-Baruni, Al-Mazudi. I'll give a few seconds to answer this question. If you are not very strong in history, you'd be taking a very big chance in this question unless until these are factual questions. So unless until you know the answer, I would advise you not to answer these kind of questions in prelims. Correct answer is Al-Biruni. Let's compare all these four persons. Abdul Razak, he was a Persian scholar. Al-Biruni was also a Persian scholar. Al-Mazudi is an Arab traveler, whereas Ibn Battuta belonged to Morocco. He is an ambassador of Persia. He visited during the rule of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Ibn Battuta is related to Tughlaq. Al-Baruni is the one who accompanied Ghazni and wrote the book called as Taqi-Hind. He was the first Muslim scholar to study in India. You should understand the origin of, from which country they are and during whose time they came. Ibn Battuta during Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Abdul Razak during Devaraya II of Vijayanagara kingdom, Al-Burani during Muhammad Ghazni, Al-Mazudi. There is not much information about this. His book is Murujud Zahab. And Al-Burani is called as father of Indology. So pause the slide and just have a comparison about all these four important personality. They are either travelers or scholars who studied in India. Let's go on to the ninth question. Who among the following are beneficiaries of Kisan Credit Card? Individual farmers, tenant farmers, joint liability group of farmers. Select the correct answer using the codes. Who are the beneficiaries of Kisan Credit Card? So the correct answer is all these people, be it individual farmer, tenant, or joint liability group of farmers, all these persons are beneficiaries of Kisan Credit Card. I'll just give you an overview of the scheme. It was introduced in 1998 and the idea was given by NABARD. It introduced to meet the various credit requirements of farmers because initially, if they want to buy seeds or equipments, they need a lot of credit. So it aimed to give financial assistance. And another aim is to simplify the procedure in getting adequate and timely credit. Our main aim was to make sure that they do not go to money lenders, but rather go in a formal credit manners to help them buy inputs such as seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, etc. It also covers post-harvest expenses, consumption requirements, investment in credit requirements, etc. This is not only for agriculture but also allied activities. For example, beekeeping, sericulture, viticulture, etc. Those are allied activities. It also covers that. This scheme is implemented by commercial banks, small banks, and also in cooperatives. Here, the main thing is farmers are exempted from high rate of interest by regular banks. Usually, if you go to regular bank, it is usually 7 to 8%, going up to 10%. Here in KCC, it is between 2 to 4%. This interest helps farmer to repay the loan better. It will instill discipline among the farmers that if you have to buy from the banks, you have to give it back to them, etc. About 1.8 lakh Kisan credit cards with a limit of 1.68 lakh crore have been sanctioned as of January. Okay. What are the features of this? They can meet their financial requirements during post-harvest season. Loan of about 3 lakh can be sanctioned. And then it will a savings account with affordable interest rate will also be, it will also be given to the farmers, and a flexible repayment of loans. The important thing is no collateral will be required for loans up to 1.6 lakh, and maximum the loans can get up to 3 lakhs. For a period of 3 years, credit will be available and repayment can be made post harvest. If you buy it pre harvest, you can, it is flexible and you can generate it after harvest. And availing these subsidies is independent on the repayment history and general credit history. That is, if someone has a very good credit history, that is, if they do timely payments, etc., then they'll have different benefits also. Fees such as processing fees, land mortgage, deed charges, etc., which are usually, if someone is not a farmer and he is going to the bank and get availing these services, he'll be having to pay all these processing fees, etc. For a farmer, it is not there. The limit will be based on how much land a farmer has, what crops he does, and what is the scale of finance, etc. This card is valid for 5 years, post which it is subjected to every 1 year review, that is annual review. Case of good credit score, the limit will be further extended after. If its limit is 3 lakh, it will be further extended if he has a good credit score. Rescheduling of loans and conversions will also be permitted in case of any natural calamity, like if the farmer belongs to a region where it is affected by cyclone or floods, then there will be surely some leeway for it. What are the eligibility criteria? That is, who are the beneficiaries of this? Individual farmers, sharecroppers and tenant farmers, self-help groups, and then farmers who are involved in allied activities also, that is animal husbandry, etc. Fish farmers, fishers, self-help groups, joint liability groups, women groups, etc. Who own a registered boat or any other type of fishing vehicle. Poultry farmers, that not only birds but also sheep, rabbit, goats, pigs, etc. And dairy farmers and people who are also in the dairy sector, they are also benefited. This is the last question of the day. Consider the following regarding to Dada Saheb Phalke. He is an Indian filmmaker who directed India's first full-length feature film in 1913, called as Father of Indian Cinema. India's highest award in cinema is named after him, that is Dada Saheb Phalke. I'll tell you why this was in news and why this question has appeared here. Try and answer this question. The correct answer is all of the above statements are actually correct. Recently, Narendra Modi congratulated Rajinikanth after he has been conferred the Dada Saheb Phalke Award, which is the highest award in cinema. It is actually presented annually at National Film Award ceremony which is set up by Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. It is given to people for their outstanding contribution to the growth and development of Indian cinema. First presented in 1969. The first recipient is actually a woman, Devika Rani, the first lady of Indian cinema. So just know about this. So that's all. A quick recap of the session today. Rule of law by the concept given by Dicey. And what are the three concepts in it? Which concept is not applicable to India compared to Britain? What is output gap, positive and negative output gap, and how it affects inflation? OPEC, OPEC plus, what is the difference? Does India belong to any of these two? Actually, the answer is no. Social organization and leaders, what are the four organization? We saw this from modern India perspective. Wildlife Protection Act, and also Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 1960, which paved way for creation of Animal Welfare Board of India. And then space hurricanes. What are the reasons for increase in imports, and did exports fall? Is that the scenario? Arab travelers, four Arab travelers, and we saw father of Indian Indology, Al Biruni. Kisan credit card scheme, what is the scheme? What are the features of the scheme? Who are the beneficiaries of scheme? We saw all this. Dada Saheb Palke, who was the first recipient, who is the latest recipient. So these are the things we saw in this session. I hope this session was useful to you. And if you have any questions, we'll be really happy to clarify your doubts. Kindly post it in the chat box or in the comment box below. And stay tuned for the upcoming sessions. Thank you.